Coral reefs are underwater structures made from calcium carbonate secreted by corals. They are colonies of tiny animals found in marine waters that contain few nutrients. Most coral reefs are built from stony corals, which in turn consist of polyps that cluster in groups. The polyps belong to a group of animals known as cnidaria, which also includes sea anemones and jellyfish. Unlike sea anemones, coral polyps secrete hard carbonate exoskeletons which support and protect their bodies. Reefs grow best in warm, shallow, clear, sunny, and agitated waters. Often called rainforests of the sea, coral reefs form some of the most diverse ecosystems on Earth. They occupy less than 0.1% of the world's ocean surface, about half the area of France, yet they provide a home for 25% of all marine species. Coral reefs flourish even though they are surrounded by ocean waters that provide few nutrients. They are most commonly found at shallow depths in tropical waters. Coral formations are divided into three zones: the shallow shore that extends from the shoreline to about 30 feet in depth. An excellent example is Bonaire, Netherlands Antilles, where the reef can extend onto the shoreline. Platform reefs, that we refer to as the mid-reef, extend from 30 to 50 feet and lack the structure of the edge reef, the towering deep, that can extend to 180 feet. The age of the mid-reef structure varies between 1,000 and 10,000 years. Edge reefs, characterized by the great towering reefs of Cozumel, Mexico, and the Grand Cayman Islands, are continuous structures rising into coral peaks high above the edge of the drop-off zone and extending to a depth of 180 feet. Edge reefs can be hundreds of thousands of years old. They are magnificent structures and safely within range of the recreational diver. Coral reefs deliver ecosystem services to tourism, fisheries, and shoreline protection. The annual global economic value of coral reefs was estimated at $375 billion in 2002. However, coral reefs are fragile ecosystems partly because they are very sensitive to water temperatures and typically only exist in waters surrounding the equator. They are under threat from climate change, oceanic acidification, blast fishing, cyanide fishing for aquarium fish, overuse of reef resources, and harmful land use practices, including urban and agricultural runoff and water pollution, which can harm reefs by encouraging excess algal growth. Most coral reefs were formed after the last glacial period, when melting ice caused the sea level to rise and flood the continental shelves. This means that most coral reefs are less than 10,000 years old. As communities established themselves on the shelves, the reefs grew upwards, pacing rising sea levels. Reefs that rose too slowly could become drowned reefs, covered by so much water that there was insufficient light. Coral reefs are found in the deep sea away from continental shelves, around oceanic islands and atolls. The vast majority of these islands are volcanic in origin. The few exceptions have tectonic origins where plate movements have lifted the deep ocean floor on the surface. The approximately 20,000-year-old Great Barrier Reef offers an example of how coral reefs are formed on continental shelves. Sea level was then 120 meters, lower than in the 21st century. As sea level rose, the water and the corals encroached on what had been the hills of the Australian coastal plain. By 13,000 years ago, sea level had risen to 60 meters, lower than at present, and many hills of the coastal plain had become continental islands. As the sea level rise continued, water topped most of the continental islands. The corals could then overgrow the hills, forming the present cays and reefs. Sea level on the Great Barrier Reef has not changed significantly in the last 6,000 years, and the age of the modern living reef structure is estimated to be between 6,000 and 8,000 years. Although the Great Barrier Reef formed along the continental shelf and not around a volcanic island, Darwin's principles apply. Development stopped at the Barrier Reef stage since Australia is not about to submerge. It formed the world's largest barrier reef 300 to 1,000 meters from shore, stretching for 2,000 kilometers. Healthy tropical coral reefs grow horizontally from 1 to 3 centimeters per year and grow vertically anywhere from 1 to 25 centimeters per year. However, they grow only at depths shallower than 150 meters because of their need for sunlight and cannot grow above sea level. Live coral are small animals embedded in calcium carbonate shells. It is a mistake to think of coral as plants or rocks. Coral heads consist of accumulations of individual animals called polyps, arranged in diverse shapes. Polyps are usually tiny, but they can range in size from a pinhead to 12 inches across. Reef building or hermatypic corals live only in the photic zone above 50 meters, the depth to which sufficient sunlight penetrates the water, allowing photosynthesis to occur. Coral polyps do not photosynthesize, but have a symbiotic relationship with zooxanthellae. These organisms live within the tissues of the polyps and provide organic nutrients that nourish the polyp. Because of this relationship, coral reefs grow much faster in clear water, which emits more sunlight. Without their symbionts, coral growth would be too slow to form significant reef structures. Corals get up to 90% of their nutrients from their symbionts. Reefs grow as polyps and other organisms deposit calcium carbonate, the basis of coral, as a skeletal structure beneath and around themselves, pushing the coral's heads top upwards and outwards. Waves, grazing fish such as parrotfish, sea urchins, sponges, and other forces and organisms act as biorotors, breaking down coral skeletons into fragments that settle into spaces in the reef structure or form sandy bottoms in associated reef lagoons. Many other organisms living in the reef front facing the open ocean. These algae strengthen the reef structure by depositing limestone in sheets over the reef surface. Coral reefs form some of the world's most productive ecosystems, providing complex and varied marine habitats that support a wide range of other organisms. Fringing reefs just below tide level have a mutually beneficial relationship with mangrove forests at high tide level and seagrass meadows in between. The reefs protect the mangroves and seagrass from strong currents and waves that would damage them or erode the sediments in which they are rooted, while the mangroves and seagrass protect the coral from large influxes of silt, fresh water, and pollutants. This level of variety in the environment benefits many coral reef animals, which, for example, may feed in the seagrass and use the reefs for protection or breeding. Reefs are home to a large variety of animals, including fish, seabirds, sponges, cnidarians, which include some types of corals and jellyfish, worms, crustaceans, including shrimp, cleaner shrimp, spiny lobsters and crabs, mollusks, including cephalopods, echinoderms, including starfish, sea urchins and sea cucumbers, sea squirts, sea turtles, and sea snakes. Aside from humans, mammals are rare on coral reefs, with visiting cetaceans such as dolphins being the main exception. A few of these varied species feed directly on corals, while others graze on algae on the reef. Coral reefs are dying around the world. In particular, coral mining, agriculture and urban runoff, pollution, organic and inorganic, overfishing, blast fishing, disease, and the digging of canals and access into islands and bays are localized threats to coral ecosystems. Broader threats are sea temperature rise, sea level rise, and pH changes from ocean acidification, all associated with greenhouse gas emissions. A study released in April 2013 has shown that air pollution can also stunt the growth of coral reefs. Researchers from Australia, Panama, and the UK used coral records between 1880 and 2000 from the Western Caribbean to show the threat of factors such as coal burning and volcanic eruptions. In the El Nino year of 2010, preliminary reports show global coral bleaching reached its worst level since another El Nino year in 1998, when 16% of the world's reefs died as a result of increased water temperature. In Indonesia's Aceh province, Surveys show that some 80% of bleached corals died. Scientists do not yet understand the long-term impacts of coral bleaching, but they do know that bleaching leaves corals vulnerable to disease, stunts their growth, and affects their reproduction, while severe bleaching kills them. General estimates show approximately 10% of the world's coral reefs are dead. About 60% of the world's reefs are at risk due to destructive human-related activities. By the 2030s, 90% of reefs are expected to be at risk from both human activities and climate change. By 2050, all coral reefs will be in danger. The shallow shore is a temperate zone from the shoreline to 30 feet. It is rich in life and is where juvenile fish seek protection from larger predators. Bonaire, Netherlands Antilles, provides a prime example of shallow shore environment. Bonaire is an extinct volcanic island and is a special protectorate of the Netherlands. Approximately one-half of the population is transplants from this European country. The official currency is the US dollar, and multiple languages are widely spoken, including English, Dutch, Spanish, and Papiamento. Even the language of the island is unique. Papiamento is spoken only on 3 islands in the world, including Bonaire, and its 2 sister islands of Curaçao and Aruba. The island had a small full-time population of approximately 3,000 people until the 1960s. Even today, the island has a full-time population of only 14,000. There is still not a stoplight on the island, and takes us back to a time that has long been forgotten, except in the smallest towns in modern industrialized countries. A set of circumstances and geological forces came together by chance to create this enchanted island with its world-renowned coral reef ecosystem and amazing sea life. Bonaire has very few sandy beaches and a rocky shoreline, mostly comprised of coral. Because it is a desert island, there is little or no farming, and thus no fertilizer pollutant runoff into the ocean that is a reef killer. The historically small population resulted in no sewage being pumped into the surrounding waters and the abundant coral reef ecosystem that surrounds the entire island. The island is located in the southernmost region of the Caribbean and outside of the typical hurricane path. There has not been a direct hit to the island in over 400 years, allowing the reefs to flourish and grow like no other location in the Caribbean. And most importantly, the governments of Bonaire and the Netherlands and their citizens have recognized the truly unique geological makeup of Bonaire and have taken world-leading steps to implement conservation efforts and protocols to protect this natural wonder. Approximately 80,000 visitors come to the island each year, with 75% of the foreign visitors coming to the island to scuba dive. The lucky few that had the opportunity to visit the island has historically been limited. Direct jet service has expanded in recent years as routes have been established by major airlines from Amsterdam, Atlanta, Houston, Miami, Charlotte, and LaGuardia airports. Puddle jumper service between Aruba and Curaçao to Bonaire is now in place. Long gone are the days when the islands could only be reached by boat. It is now relatively easy to get to Bonaire with direct jet service from Miami to Bonaire. The flight is approximately 3 hours. The permanent residents of the island and the governments of Bonaire and the Netherlands have implemented reef protection protocols over the last 30 years to ensure the magical reefs of the island are protected. Bonaire has consistently been rated number 1 in shore diving, best value, macro sea life, coral reef healthiness, safest location to scuba dive, and photography. The island's license plate reads, Diver's Paradise. The island is known for its diver's freedom with over 50 dive sites accessible from shore and 24-hour per day diving. There are an additional 30 dive sites that are accessible by boat. In total, there are almost 90 marked dive sites on Bonaire.